Leftover lasagne.
Leftover lasagna.
Lasagna? No way.
It's a type of sandwich.
Some kind of gross pasta.
Leftover Lasagna is a
podcast
hosted by
my
Nitin
church
Sundar and Tony Uncle. Leftover Lasagna.
Very funny name.
Hello and welcome to Leftover Lasagne, episode 11. Nitin, hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing very good, Tony. Things are looking very professional now. You have a backdrop that has the name of this podcast.
I know.
Except,
I know.
like we were talking about before the recording, this reminds me of the famous, not so famous, but this photo of Rishi Sunak that went viral a few days back, in which he's, I think, at the Mormon church, and his head is in front of the banner that says Mormon, except his head is blocking the middle M. So it's moron. And it has Rishi Sunak's face right in the middle. So right now, Tony, you're leftover lane. Yeah. That's
Correct.
what you are.
Yeah, no, I think many people have pointed out that if I can somehow chop my face off, it will become a much better podcast. So let me do that for right now.
if you chop your face off, Tony, then you become Nicolas Cage.
My God. Okay.
That joke
It is
was
a high
very
voltage
Travolta.
joke. High voltage joke. But Nitin, our podcast has been described as many things by many people. But one thing both our women and men listeners agree on is that it is somehow a homoerotic podcast, it seems. It's like a very weird thing. I mean, it's not like, I'm obsessed with you or something like that. It's not like the last time you came home late October and you left in the middle of the night at 2:30 and you found me asleep on my couch and you left your jacket on me so that I wouldn't feel cold. And I've held on to that jacket ever since, so much so that in the middle of May at 12:45 p.m. on a Bombay afternoon, I'm wearing that jacket in this podcast recording. I mean, what are people talking about?
My very beloved Adidas jacket, which was bought at Mota Arcade in Bangalore, which is a place where you get branded goods for cheap. I got this jacket, I think, in 2010, right? And I left it at your place in Bombay in last year when we had gone to watch
For
a
our
cricket match.
audio
ostensibly.
listeners,
Yeah.
correct. For our ostensibly. This is nice. For our audio listeners, I must clarify that I am indeed wearing that jacket. But Nitin, you got it in Bangalore for cheap. Is it Adidas or Adigas?
You should. Only the best for
it's
you,
not
Tony.
important.
So, firstly, you said the weird thing is both our male listeners and our female listeners feel that this is a homoerotic podcast. The weird thing about that is we have listeners of both genders or of all genders.
Actually, I thought there was only one gender.
Call back.
But both genders. No, but tell me something. Like this you spoke about earlier, that women have this, girl gangs going. They hype each other up all the time. But it's not like you like look at them and say, oh, like it is less erotic. What is the comparable? Like you don't do that, right? But like when homoerotic is homoerotic. Yeah. It is gender agnostic in that sense.
Yes.
But why this difference for men is my question.
Oh, the obvious thing is, it again points to toxic male behavior or the toxic male tropes that our culture has adopted. That it's considered icky for men to be close to each other. It's considered natural for women to be close to each other. It actually reinforces that point. I didn't think of this. Good one.
Yeah. No, but there is this whole thing called no homo. Have you heard this?
No. All I've heard of is no homeo, which is please don't use homeopathic pills. They're not good.
So no homo is a slang phrase used at the end of a sentence to assert the statement or action by the speaker had no intentional homosexual implications. So basically, if a man is complimenting another man, you have to apparently end it with no homo. Otherwise, they think that your only intention is sexual or something, I suppose. I don't know. But it is part of that weird whole thing, right? But in that sense, the segue here was into one of the things that repeating tropes is great Malayalam movies, right? And this time I want to talk about Manumal Boys, which I actually showed a bunch of boys/men who are very close to each other, right? And the crux of that movie is sort of encapsulated in a line from a Tamil movie from 1991, Guna, which went, மனிதர் உணர்ந்து கொள்ள இது மனித காதல் அல்ல அதையும் தாண்டி புனிதமானது. Am I saying it right? What does it mean, Nitin?
You're saying it perfectly, Tony. Yes.
Yeah. Basically, it means that for humans to appreciate, this is not a mortal love. It is something beyond, right? Something more
Yeah.
pure,
Something
or
purer.
divine, or one of those things.
Yeah.
Kamal Hassan actually used it in Guna to explain a sort of maniac's love for a woman, right? Whom he ends up
Yeah.
kidnapping and all. But in Manimal Boys, it's used really, really well in a manner that if it weren't for that line, that movie simply wouldn't have had the same impact, right? And this is what you told me before I even watched the movie and made sure that I watched Guna before I watched Manimal Boys.
Yes, indeed. So Guna is the Tamil film which came in 1991. Manjumel Boys, of course. Manjumel Boys is the Malayalam film that was set in the same place and came out a few months back, and it is a runaway success and all of that.
Yeah.
And the beauty is the same line is used for bro love as opposed to your regular romantic love. And there is this very nice video of the makers of Manjumel Boys coming and meeting Kamal Hassan in his office after the success of the film, and there's this discussion and there's a camera turned on with these parties interacting, and Kamal Hassan points out the subversion or the use of the adaptation of that line in a very different context, and how well it works in the movie.
The reason I brought it up today and the segue to our conversation is that Manimal Boys is, of course, on OTT and everyone should watch it if you haven't. We're not giving spoilers. But at the same time, it was in the news this week because Ilayaraja woke up and said, how can you just use my music in your movie without permission, right? And he was invoking some kind of copyright law.
Yeah, so let's dive right into it. So today we are going to be talking about copyrights as the broad concept. May I start off this discussion on Ilayaraja by pointing out, Tony, that today wearing my jacket, you also look like a young king, Ilayaraja. So
you should say no homo, da. No homo.
Hashtag no homo. Indeed.
மனிதர் உணர்ந்து கொள்ள இது மனித காதல் அல்ல அதையும் தாண்டி புனிதமானது.
Ilayaraja, for our North Indian listeners and viewers who probably don't know, or our foreign viewers and listeners, Ilayaraja is one of the most celebrated, famous music composers in India. I think he's composed over for over 5,000 films now at this point. I don't think anybody is keeping count. Predominantly in Tamil cinema, but also in other South Indian industries, and a little bit, I think, in Bollywood as well. He's been around for many, many years and been doing this for a long time. And Ilayaraja is as much a part of the cultural signature of Tamil Nadu itself, right? The concept of Raja song or Raja's music, which used to be extremely popular in the 80s and 90s, and he sort of maybe lost out to the next wave of music directors who came out later. A.R. Rahman himself being the biggest example of that, where Ilayaraja was considered not as modern as some of the new folks who were coming. But there's been this whole second nostalgia wave around Ilayaraja, especially in the last 10 years, where a lot of movie directors of Tamil cinema start introducing songs of Ilayaraja into their movies, and not as part of the soundtrack, but it's running in the radio somewhere at a tea shop, for instance, and it just evokes a certain time and space in the mind of the viewers, and it totally works, right?
Even the first popular Tamil rap, which emerged from Malaysia, starts off with them in a barber shop and this guy saying, put on a Raja song, and it starts with the Malai Thirandu or something like that, right?
Madai Thirandu, yes, which is one of those famous songs from Ilayaraja. This is actually an interesting sub point that I want to make, right? I live in Dubai these days, and I briefly lived in Singapore and Malaysia for some time as well. All of these places have very strong South Indian Tamil culture, which is very because a lot of migrants from India who have
and amazing Tamil food, which is not
amazing South Indian food,
which is not Tindi fare.
Indeed. But you know what's interesting? When you go to these places, if you visited a restaurant in Madras, for instance, which is where I grew up, so I'm exposed to various settings of Tamil culture. If you go to a restaurant in Madras, you would typically hear songs, the new songs that have just recently come out, playing on the PA systems or the radios. Whereas if you go to Singapore or you go to Malaysia or you go to Dubai and you go to some of these restaurants, they are all still playing those 80s, 90s Ilayaraja songs, sometimes the early 2000 songs, but they are not actually always playing the most recent songs. And the reason for that, I believe, is because the people running these places are playing music that was cool when they had a link back to Tamil Nadu. And and they are yearning for a certain time and space in their lives, which is when they connected with that culture. And this is also largely true for a lot of the patrons at these establishments, because they're all people who moved outside of India, outside of South India at that certain point in time. Just an interesting aside that I wanted to make. The reason why YogiB and Nakshatra made a rap on that song is also symptomatic of that same thing, because they are also immigrants in Malaysia, right? I don't know which generation immigrants they are, but they're also invoking a song from a different era, because that's the era in which they feel most truly alive. But
this is interesting, which is not really related to this topic or whatever, but who cares? Like, if you listen to Leftover Lasagne enough, you'll know that we don't care about such niceties. But that really, when you talk about immigrants, right, or migrants, most people are moving to a different place, hoping to give their family a better future, right? Like, parents are moving to give their kids a better future or send money back home, etc., etc. But what you still consider home is nostalgia, right? You've left all of the nostalgia behind to get ahead in life, but what actually sort of gives you emotional succor is things from back home, right? And what you sort of thought of as amazing back then. Interestingly, there was this Twitter thing that came out yesterday, which basically said that everything that you consider amazing, right, whether it is in music or how good the world was, or how much better politics was, etc., is just dependent on what the world was when you were in your teens, right, or when you were 12 or something like that, which is pretty amazing, right? That like, none of us are objective, but also in that lack of objectivity, you can pin it down to an exact time frame where you thought things were amazing.
There is a beautiful tweet that I saw very recently. It's again an old idea. It's the same idea that you're pointing out. Every single person in the world believes the music that they listened to was the best when they were 18. It doesn't matter what their age is now, but everybody believes the music they listened to as teenagers when they were 17 or 18 was the best. Music peaked in that particular year, and it's been a steady decline since then. So
with the power of share screen, let me bring it up, right? Nostalgia tends to peak at a single age, right? And the tweet basically says, it turns out music, movies, entertainment, and society in general peak during the exact time period when you, the person reading this, were a teenager, right? So most close-knit communities, most moral society, least political division, happiest families, most reliable news reporting, best music. Actually, Nitin, to your point, has a very strong peak, right? It is basically what you listen to at your teens. Best radio, best fashion, best economy, best movies, best television, best sporting events. I think we can all testify.
We can all agree to this. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Without saying no homo, right? That is the advantage of sport.
Except, dear listener, in the case of Tony and me, this is actually true, because when Rahul Dravid and VVS Lakshman had that partnership in Kolkata, it's just coincidental that we were both in our teens at that time, but that is the greatest moment in cricket.
So, on the Ilayaraja thing itself, right, and copyright, if you think about it, there are 4 different amazing things that have happened because Ilayaraja may not have been so anal about copyrights, right? One that we spoke of, obviously, is that movies use a lot of his music now, right, and do it to good effect. Like even Premam, for that matter, which is another hit, use the same song. Secondly, something like rap music, where they have sort of elevated that song, is actually, has the same Ilayaraja song playing, but with rap in between, right? And basically talking about their struggles and all of that. And it is just an elevated layer, but it wouldn't have existed without the base layer, right? So it is improvement upon that. The third is someone like Thaikudam Bridge, right, who gained popular consciousness only because they redid some of these nostalgia-based songs in a elevated fashion, right? Obviously with better accompaniments and all of that. So much so that Govind Vasanta is now one of the most amazing music composers there is in movies across the world, right? Which is
Yeah.
basically from Thaikudam Bridge itself. And the fourth is a layer of performance which I never thought I would watch, right? Which is this person called Alex Babu.
Alexander
But there was
Babu.
this
Yes.
Alexander Babu, right? And he had this special, I think it's for like 2-3 hours or whatever, which is Alex
Yeah.
in Wonderland or whatever. And he sort of combines music with comedy. And I'm like, A, I don't follow Tamil culture. B, I have zero idea about music. Okay, see, I may be a little bit interested in comedy, but I'm not going to watch this for 3 hours, right? I'm like, I'm not going to appreciate this. But like, so many people told me about this, and I sat and I watched, and I was transfixed. And really,
Yeah.
the reason it comes alive is because he's able to sort of layer on top of
Yeah.
an existing sort of reference, right? Whether you
Yeah.
get that pop culture reference or not is immaterial. It is that you're able to derive something more from a basic art form, that art
Yeah.
piece that was created by Raja sir in that sense.
Yeah, which is a lot like leftover lasagna itself, right? Layers on top of layers. But derivative art, right? It's all
We are
inspiration
standing
at
on
end of it.
the giants. We are standing on the shoulders of giants, right? That way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Now, it's nice that you mentioned those various ways in which people have paid their tributes to Ilayaraja over the years. Something happened in the last 10 or 15 years. I think as the internet exploded and you had people like Thaikudam Bridge getting popularity through the internet, right? That's just as an example. I think Ilayaraja woke up and said, hang on, I have not really endorsed any of these people who are now using my
Yeah.
content. It's not like
Yeah.
they're copying my content, literally, right? None
Yeah.
of this is, they're not trying to slip off an Ilayaraja song as their own by changing a few things here and there. We will talk about Anu Malik in a bit. But what they're doing is something else altogether, right? They're just using the original stuff, and it is a tribute. It is in respect of a great person and his art. But something about this irked Ilayaraja, and he said, I have not really endorsed this. This is not something that I am gaining from, and I'm going to go and shut down all of this content that's being put out there. I think 5 or 6 years back, so one of Ilayaraja's longtime collaborators is, of course, SP Balasubramaniam, who unfortunately is no more. One of the most tragic losses during COVID was SPB, right? Now, if what Ilayaraja is to music in Tamil cinema, SPB is to vocals, right? I think he has again sung about, I don't know, 20,000 songs. Nobody is keeping count at this point. And a lot of them with Ilayaraja during his peak years. Now, in the latter stages of his life, SPB started going on these tours where he would go to different parts of the world and he would perform concerts of his songs, right? And I think 5 years back, during one of his tours to the US, and he was just about to perform, I think, in one of the cities, he received a copyright notice from Ilayaraja's team saying, cease and desist, you shall not perform these songs. And if you do, you will be in violation of copyright and you will have to pay
Wow.
hefty sums of money. And this was such a shocker because these two guys were actually very close friends and they've collaborated so much together. They've spent so much time in each other's company creating wonderful art, right? Which you could say, I mean, yeah, even the Beatles had a falling out, but you could almost say that these two guys were like Beatles, right? And suddenly over something like this,
Yeah.
where, and the interesting thing is also that Ilayaraja is actually not, he's not one of those flashy individuals. He doesn't go around maintaining, cultivating a persona. He's a guy who sits in his house. He's always wearing the same sort of clothes. He does his job, goes about his business. Very simple guy, right? But something about the fact that there are other people gaining from work that I created, and I'm not getting any part of it, or not credit. I'm getting all the credit, but I'm not getting any monetary reward out of it, and it's not something I approved. Just seemed to irk him so much that he was willing to go after SPB, and SPB was just the tip of the iceberg, right? And what has happened to Manjumail Boys has happened to a bunch of other movies and music directors who have all received these notices from Ilayaraja, and it's become a thing now. Yeah.
No, so my immediate shallow reaction is to call this the Sunil Gavaskar syndrome, right? Which is that he was like a legend in his own time, but didn't necessarily gain monetarily as much as any of the average cricketers would have gained right now, right? But I think really this will play out across hopefully the rest of this podcast. I want to say lawyers are terrible, right? And lawyers are the reason why many of these things are happening. And there was an interesting thing. around this podcast which I was listening to, which spoke about Sam Altman and Scarlett Johansson, which we shall get to. So their question was in law school, one of the first things that happens is when you're doing case studies, the prof asks you, why did this case get filed? Okay, and first year law school, everyone is eager for class participation, as you and I never were, Nitin Sundar, but apparently this is the thing. Wants to sort of put frameworks, give intelligent comments, etc., and they analyze it threadbare and give some inputs, and the prof at the end of the class is like, no, the reason why this case got filed is because the lawyer wanted a BMW. Right? The only people getting rich in this whole process is lawyers, right? And those are the two layers, really. Like, if you let creative people sort of build on top of what you have, it brings you to the forefront, but it creates something beautifully new as well, right? As opposed to this nonsense thing around litigation and stuff like that.
The lawyers are a problem, but equally so, the law is also a problem, but which again goes back to lawyers, right? Who else makes these laws? Now, just on the Ilayaraja Manjumel Boys controversy, right? The funny thing is, the makers of the movie Manjumel Boys actually had taken rights for the usage of that song.
Correct.
And they had taken it not from one party, but from two different parties, because when Guna originally was released, it was released in multiple languages, right? And most Kamal Hassan, Raj Kamal films from that time used to also be released in Kannada, Telugu, and other languages. So, so Manjumel Boys, the Guna soundtrack, the audio rights to that song were actually owned by two different companies. One company, I think Pyramid, had the Tamil, the rights to the Tamil version of the song, while another company had rights to some of the other languages. Manjumel Boys was also going to release in multiple languages, right? It is quintessentially released as a Tamil film, Malayalam film, and now I think with Netflix, most of these movies try to release with multiple languages because it's also easy to subtitle them.
No, it is just good due diligence to sort of take rights before this happens, so that if the movie is outright hit, you don't have to pay extra, right? So good job. I think Manjumal Boys.
No, and in fact, I think this part is now very clear these days, that if you're doing something, if the appropriation is as blatant, right? And I'll use the word appropriation here because I don't know what the different word is, but the lift here was quite clear, right? This movie was referencing Guna. In fact, I think he even talks about Ilayaraja in the movie itself, if I remember right. So it was a direct placement within the movie. Even if the movie had not done well, I'm sure that they would have run into troubles if they had not taken these rights. But they had actually taken rights for multiple languages from two different companies. So now the producers of the film who have received the legal notice from Ilayaraja are like, hang on, we already have taken rights for these, right? But Ilayaraja, obviously, we mentioned that lawyers are a problem, but Ilayaraja is coming from a slightly more meta layer saying, hey, all this content, all this music was generated from my brain. I don't care who owns the rights for these now. I was paid a salary at some point by someone. Correct. But whoever is now creating content out of this and benefiting needs to come, some of it needs to come back to me, right? And Ilayaraja, a couple of years back, probably in while working with his lawyers, did this tie-up with Spotify, right? Where all of Ilayaraja's work over the years became available on Spotify, and there was a series of ads that they did together. There's a very funny ad which I keep looking for on YouTube, but they've taken it down, where Ilayaraja says, என்னோட 45 years கரியரோட எல்லா சாங்கும் இப்ப ஸ்பாட்டிஃபைல நீங்க கேட்கலாம். It was the first ad that I saw. I remember me and my brother sharing this video with each other and having a hearty laugh. It was very cute, right? And this, by the way, was Ilayaraja putting out
என்னோட legacy fortify பண்றதுக்கு இப்போ Spotifyல.
But that was basically an attempt from Ilayaraja to say, okay, let there be some kind of legal recourse to
no,
this.
But my question is different.
Let there be a channel back where I'm able to benefit from this music, people enjoying my music. But
I agree. My question
it's a battle
is
that you'll never be able to win because that's how it
has it come from Ilayaraja himself or has it come from his lawyers? That's the question that I want to ask. Like, lawyers get paid by the hour, no? So if you are able to sort of instigate this thing, you can sort of squeeze more, basically.
I wouldn't see. At the end of the day, Ilayaraja is a creator and he's a mind of his own. I'm sure deep down somewhere there is some resentment that he has about all of this, right? And we are
Sure.
not here at any point saying whether it's right or wrong on his part to take the
Yeah.
actions that he's taking.
No,
Obviously, he has
but
engaged the help of lawyers to get this done, but this is coming from
Yeah.
him. It is not
Okay,
an idea that
interesting.
somebody else put in his
Sure.
head. Yeah.
I mean, if he decides to sue us, it's not like we have legal representation. So Jida, Gaurav Das Gupta, you'll have to represent us pro bono. But my point is that if he's really looking at credit or validation, I think he gets it in heaps, right? As opposed to, I guess, half the time. Knowledgeable Tamil crowd is spending on leisure, is spent on needlessly hyping up MS Dhoni and CSK. The other half is spent fighting between who is greater,
Ajit
A.R.
and
Rahman
Vijay.
or Ilayaraja, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so A.R. Rahman's famous line is "Ella pugarum irevanuke," which means all glory to God. As opposed to here, all of the credit or validation actually goes to Raja sir, right? Everyone who pays tribute is not like ripping it off like an Anu Malik, which you want to come to. They are all saying, Ilayaraja songs were so amazing that there's nothing even, 20, 30 years down the line that has bettered it. So, we firmly respect him. It's only the money that he's not getting because the labels own it. Right? So
And
that was why I
partly-
was asking whether it comes
And
from
partly-
the lawyers or himself.
Yeah, and partly because I think Ilayaraja now for 50 years has had all the
45.
reverence. 45 years has had all the respect, reverence, and everybody knows that he's great, and he has heard it ad nauseum from every single person in the industry. Like, you now coming back and paying your respects to me is of no use to me because I know that I'm great and I've received that respect, and your validation isn't of any importance to me anymore, and hence that has led to some kind of resentment, which is its own sad story if you think about it, right? Like, what do you crave? What do you crave beyond the point, right?
No,
if
so
you have everything.
yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I think like we should probably move away from the personal to the more abstract. To say, as a creator, I would think that you would feel amazing if someone's taking your work and sort of giving it a modern treatment and improvement in a way that is not a caricature, right?
Yeah.
It's not like done in a parody.
It's not parody.
format
Yeah,
where,
it's done with respect.
yeah.
No,
Anyway,
absolutely.
that's
I think
what-
we should move. We should move from Ilayaraja, and good luck to him and to people who love him and want to continue to pay their respects to him.
दिल है मुश्किल जीना यहाँ जरा हटके जरा बचके ये है बॉम्बे मेरी जान ऐ दिल है मुश्किल जीना यहाँ जरा हटके जरा बचके ये है बॉम्बे मेरी जान in the cavern in the canyon let's go waiting for mine like a miner 49er and his daughter Clementine oh my darling oh my darling oh my darling Clementine you were lost and gone forever dreadful story Clementine.
And let's talk about some other elements of the music industry itself, since that's where we are, which are okay. So the biggest. So there's a company that has made an art form out of going after people who
BCCI.
replicate or use their music.
BCCI.
Yeah, so there is BCCI makes everyone dance to their tunes. But there is another company that has made an art form out of going after people who use their copyrighted content, typically on YouTube or any other content sharing platform, for a
This
brief
is
amount of
T-Series.
time. T-Series, I think even now, are probably the biggest channel on YouTube, or they are one of the top 5 channels.
PewDiePie and T-Series were at one point sort of racing each other or something like that.
Yeah, but nobody knew that Leftover Lasagne was going to come and take away top spot.
That's true. Leftover
Dear listener who is 12 years old today, please come back to this video in 30 years when we are number one, right? And this will be proof that the best content was created when you, dear listener,
correct. And don't pay tribute to us, pay us in cash, please, or whatever currency is in vogue
Bitcoin.
at that point.
Bitcoin.
Or something.
Please, something else. Yeah. So T-Series is the biggest music patent troll out there, right? To the extent that now companies like Instagram, for instance, or TikTok, pay T-Series a lot of money to get the rights to have their songs for creation of reels and hook steps and viral videos on those respective platforms, right? So I briefly worked at this company called Glance, and Roposo was similar to TikTok, a company that was trying to get music labels or get music on its platform for people to create UGC, user-generated content. And T-Series was that one company that was charging enormous amounts of money to get their library online, and you could not kind of sideload it and try to escape because they would come after you the moment a song from T series played on your platform without them having the rights, which is all fine, right? So T series has gone and sort of monetized this business really well. T series is run by this person called Gulshan Kumar. Do you know, before the launch of the T series YouTube channel, what Gulshan Kumar and T series used to do?
Oh, no idea.
So, have you watched this movie called Jankar Beats, Tony?
No.
So Jankar Beats, starring I think Sanjay Suri and Rahul Bose, was one of those average films that came in the early 2000s, where there was this whole concept of multiplex crossover film that became popular for a while. You had movies like Bend It Like Beckham, bunch of all these Monsoon Wedding, all those movies which were in English,
Desi.
not
Desi.
Desi English movies, not really appealing
ABCD.
to the. ABCD is a good example, right? Some of these movies are really bad, by the way, but they were just a new type of film because they were more modern in the sense that they were appealing to the urban consumer
Diaspora.
rather than the traditional, to the diaspora and so on. So Jankar Beats was one of those movies, which, by the way, is not the worst film in this list at all. It was a decent movie. But do you know the concept of Jankar Beats, which I didn't know, by the way, even when I saw that film? So back in the 90s and more so in the early 2000s, if you wanted to get, we all grew up with music cassettes, right? So back when we were teenagers, you could get cassettes of movies which had songs that you could listen to. The concept that, dear teenage listener, you have no idea what we're talking about.
Mixtapes.
Mixtapes.
Exactly.
Exactly,
If we were
that's right.
back in that era, I would have made mixtapes for you. No
You
home.
would have. Indeed. Yeah. So Jankar Beats was this concept where instead of paying and buying a cassette to a particular movie, which costs a lot of money, you could go to a certain shop, like a CD store that is selling cassettes, where you would get the Jankar Beats version of that movie's songs. Now, Jankar Beats was basically just a kind of beat that was introduced into a song without actually. So what you would hear would continue to be the original song, except it would add some additional beats that were added to it. This was a way for the people who were creating these Jankar Beat cassettes to actually escape copyright
Amazing.
violations. Yeah. And of course, this was in the pre-internet or very early internet era, right? So a lot of this music was largely consumed through CDs and through cassettes and not on the
Amazing.
internet. Like, music on the internet really is a post 2010 phenomenon, really. So they were able to get away with this, and people used to pay money, and these cassettes used to be available for much cheaper. So you could get songs of the most popular recent hits. You would get the Jankar Beats version of them, but you'd get 100 of those songs in an MP3 player, for instance.
Yeah.
The company that was creating these Jankar Beats is T Series. This is how they started their business. They were exactly what they are going after now, is what they used to do. Now, how beautiful is that?
Okay, there are two things that this reminds me of, right? The first one is in B school, obviously, they had a very strong anti-plagiarism policy, right? We figured out that how that anti-plagiarism tool worked is that it will check for a block of 6 words. So if at every 6th word you are able to just add a weasel word or change it out, the algorithm could never catch you, right? So you
Isn't it tougher to do this than actually write something original? Like, if you think about it.
That's not the point. That's not the point. We are following the entrepreneurship model of T series and figuring this out and then making a better system.
Jankar Beats. There's a Jankar Beats of answer sheets.
Jankar sheets. So the other thing that this reminds me of is that when you think of copying, right, which is the first company that comes to mind? When you just think of the word copying.
When I think of the word copying, what is the first word that comes to my mind? Moser Bear comes to my mind. Because I used to copy songs into Moser Bear.
Okay, much before
series,
that, obviously, it was when you talk about copying, you're talking about Xerox, right? And ironically enough, Xerox actually built the first personal computer, first mouse, first GUI, etc. in 1973, 10 years before someone else could. Right, and funnily enough, basically everyone else sort of copied that and did good marketing with it, and Xerox is still known as the copy company, whereas other people copied from them, right? So some of the T series rub off. But now let's talk about copying for good, I have no clue of music. I'll be the first person to admit.
Yeah.
But I am given to understand that basically, given how many chords or notes or whatever there are, it is all mathematical, right? There are only
Yeah.
a combination of certain notes or whatever played together that will sound good. So what is the next thing that you can do as for creativity is good is that this company actually went ahead, generated all the possibilities above the
Oh.
middle C octave as MIDI files,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
68.7 billion melodies, basically just mathematical brute force thing, right? And
Yeah.
they copyrighted it, and then they said anyone can use it now, so that
Oh, amazing.
like
That's
no
so
one
cool.
can claim prior use. So this is the other beautiful side of it, where the opposite of a patent troll is some of these good folks who are like, fuck copyright, fuck lawyers, like
That's
don't
very cool.
deserve another BMW, basically. Yeah.
That's very cool. But except in those 63 million songs that they copyrighted, there would have been about
68.7 billion.
Sorry, zero zeros. We
Nitin, what's
spoke
the
about
difference
this
between a million and a billion? Yeah.
Same thing.
Card process large numbers. Yeah.
68 billion songs. About 4,000 of those songs actually belong to Ilayaraja. So have they actually taken those out and given him rights for those? Since you mentioned copywriting for good, right? An interesting place where copyright works in a slightly different context, but works, and you would say, and some people would say it doesn't work, is in the drug industry, right?
Oh
Now,
yeah.
so companies that make drugs, right, the cost
Yeah.
of R&D to create a new drug is very, very high, prohibitively high.
Correct.
So high that unless there is an assured kind of or some sort of windfall at the end of it, no company in its right mind is going to do new drug discovery, right?
Correct.
So and the way drug discovery also pays off is, if you might try to create, let's say, 100 great drugs, 99 of them might not become commercially viable or successful or be of any
Yeah.
use. That one
Thinking
drug out
about
of the
Jesse Pinkman adding chili to
why are you thinking of that?
crystal
What's wrong
meth.
with you? Captain Cook.
Drug discovery, man. Come on.
Drug
Chili
discovery.
pea.
Science, bitch.
Yes, science.
So that one drug, if 99 of them are going to fail, the one drug that actually is a success needs to pay off all the R&D that went into those 100 drugs, and it needs to literally basically make a lot of money. Now the problem is, if a drug becomes important and viable, it's also a drug that typically a lot of people in the world need at very short notice, because there is a raging disease or a pandemic of some sort which can only be treated by that one drug, which was the magic cure for it, right? So how do you resolve this problem, right? The way the pharma industry does that is that there is this window called the patent window, during which the company that made the original drug can price the drug at the right price that they want to, and they also have the rights, the sole rights, to make that particular drug. Now, during that period, those drugs tend to be expensive. You would even argue that they tend to be out of the reach of a lot of the world, right? Because that's the nature of it. And it is sad that there will be people who are not able to treat very, very serious diseases, or may even lose their lives because they are not able to afford that drug. The good part is that patent window eventually will close. And once that patent window closes, anybody in the world can make a formulation of that drug, which is known as a generic drug. And it's very easy, by the way, to make that formulation. Once a drug is made, you just need to analyze that drug to find out how it was made. So anyone else can make it. The moment the drug is out there, anybody else can make it.
Yeah.
So the process of discovery is the tough part, not the process of replication.
Correct.
Right? So typically you can remake a drug in multiple different ways, and you might even find a much cheaper way to make it with the same active ingredient in it. This is done through reverse engineering, and the generic gets created, and generics are available for dime a dozen, right? So this is true for every drug that's out there now. We all consume the generics. We very rarely will purchase the original because it would be insanely expensive. But it is an interesting conundrum, right? How do you solve for this problem? Yeah, once a drug goes out of the patent window, it's all hunky-dory, but during that phase, you actually have a cure to a very, very debilitating ailment, which you cannot give to the people who need it. And you can't blame the drug companies for continuing to hold those patents as well, because that's how they make their money, because otherwise they can't invent or discover new drugs in the future. Yeah.
Correct. No, so
there's not
two parts to this, right? One is I think drug discovery is exactly how evolution also works, right? Which is basically it is trying
Yeah.
a bunch of random shit at any point in time to say, can we solve this problem? But once
Yeah.
you've solved that problem, then they stick to it. For instance, like the octopus DNA and human DNA have almost nothing in common, except that the octopus eye and the human eye works exactly the same. And I think there's some
Okay.
like 4 million or 40 million year difference between when humans were formed and octopuses were formed. But evolution has stuck to that same formula that works, saying the eye can work exactly like this, right? So similarly in the case of drug discovery. But the I think the challenge here basically is that while we appreciate and accept that capitalism is necessary for innovation, there is no two ways about it. Something like healthcare should obviously be for the common good, right? Which means if you have to compensate that particular drug, agency or the people who founded it, it has to come from the government at the end of the day. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, we're not into solutionizing on this podcast, but
Yeah,
I
we're
just
not.
feel like some of these things are pretty obvious, right? Like how can you price anything above human life?
No, but this is a race to the bottom, right? Because the moment you say a government needs to
Yeah.
subsidize drug discovery, what you're basically saying is it needs to be a public
No, not
enterprise
drug discovery,
and not a
right?
private.
Only the drugs that work.
Yeah, but you only get drugs that work if the only way to get that 100th drug that works is by
Yeah.
actually putting 6 million monkeys on keyboards, right? So you need those 99 drugs that fail. And
Yeah.
this entire enterprise then has to get funded by somebody.
You know who is not solving for this?
Damn, it's gonna blow. Baby, you should know. Oh, damn, it's gonna blow.
Is
Jesse Pinkman. No.
who is not solving for this is the world of AI, where they're basically everyone's creating a bunch of random shit, which is very expensive, to the point that the only company that is gaining from all of this is Nvidia, right? And there was this brilliant, which basically compared it to the California gold rush and said, when there is a gold rush, sell shovels, right? Which is literally what Nvidia is doing. And for AI to discover anything useful or like present use cases that have actual meaning, they have to basically continue, running through what is it, GPUs of multiplicity of GPUs of random shit to figure out something useful, right? So how is AI working? Like,
There is, but just a quick aside on the shovel analogy, right? You look at Amazon, which is this massive company that sells whatever you want. You can buy online. They run Prime Video service. They do hundreds of other things, right? Bezos has started sending spaceships outside. How does Amazon make its money? It makes its money by selling shovels, which is AWS.
Cloud.
Right? The moment the cloud was available and you wanted data and information to be stored on the cloud, the people who were actually providing you cloud space started making a lot of money, and that's Amazon's story. But
and basically Apple and Google got into it, right, by virtue of selling you mobile phones, which allows you to take photos at, I don't know, 48,000 megapixels, like in case you want to print a flex the size of Bombay. But the
weird flex,
only reason
but
they're
okay.
giving only reason they're doing that to you by default is so that you will pay for their cloud space, right? All of us now have to pay for Google Cloud and Apple Cloud just to use our mobile phones, even though like you have 256 GB with expandable memory card and all that. You're literally like at their mercy, basically.
Yeah, so not only are they giving you the shovels, they're also giving you a lot of junk to dig through, basically, right? Which is what it is, before you can finally get to the gold. They're giving you tools to create more junk, basically. Do you, by the way, pay for Google Cloud?
Yeah, of course.
You've bitten the bullet. So I have 3 different Google accounts. I have nitins@gmail.com is my email address. I have a nitins.dump@gmail.com, which is the second email address that I have, which is also filled up now. It is 85% full.
This is why I found that the Leftover Lasagne Gmail account was 95% full. You're basically dumping shit into it, aren't you?
Why do you think I'm launching all these podcasts and different Google accounts? It's just a way to save my data. Save my 48 megapixel, 48,000 megapixel, 48 million megapixel Bombay pictures. But
let's talk about the people who have supposedly gotten AI right. which is OpenAI and Sam Altman, and
Yes.
how they've gotten into trouble in the world of copyright. What is
Yeah.
happening, Nitin Sundar?
OpenAI recently launched ChatGPT 4.0, which is the latest version of their AI assistant. The key part of this, of course, was a voice assistant which responds to you, in natural language. Now, soon after that launch, Scarlett Johansson,
There were
the
many.
actor,
Do you know what is the name of this particular voice assistant?
Sky. No, what's it called?
Sky.
Yeah, it's called Sky.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one's called Sky. Now, soon after the launch, Scarlett Johansson, the famous Hollywood actor, put out a notice from her side saying, claiming that this voice that was being used was her voice, a likeness of her voice, and she had not given authorized approval to Sam Altman and ChatGPT to OpenAI to use her voice. Now, what makes this interesting is a couple of other things. Sam Altman had actually approached Scarlett Johansson a few months back, asking her
No,
to lend her voice.
forget what is
Yeah.
happening behind the scenes, right? When Scarlett
Yeah.
Johansson puts us out, why should the public believe her? There's a very interesting reason, which is that Sam Altman basically tweeted out a
Yeah.
single word tweet,
Her.
which is her.
Yeah. So, and Her is a Hollywood film that came out a few years back, starring the voice of Scarlett Johansson, in which Scarlett Johansson, so this is very meta, right? So, in Her, the real Scarlett Johansson has given authorized approval to use her real voice to act as a AI voice in a film which is about a person who falls in love with an AI
Falls in
voice
love
thinking it's
with
a
a
real
voice.
person. You take the negative of each one of these, right? In real life, Scarlett Johansson has not given rights to Sam Altman to use a likeness of her voice, not to act as a human being, but to act as AI, and not really to fool people into thinking it's a real person, but to convince people that it is actually not Scarlett Johansson in real life. But the funny thing is this, right? So he had approached her. She had said no many months back. And after that, these people had built this whole thing out. And just before the launch, like a couple of days before the launch, apparently Sam Altman again reached out to Scarlett Johansson and said, "Can you please be a part of this?"
Yeah.
Scarlett
Very
Johansson had not yet responded to this particular thing, at which point these guys went out and released the voice of Sky anyway. They did the ChatGPT 4.0 launch, at which point Sam Altman tweeted her. So clearly, it has always been his idea to try and get something, or in his, somewhere deep down, definitely, let's give him the benefit of doubt. He wanted this to sound like Scarlett Johansson for variety of reasons.
Obviously.
Also because there is a prior,
Yeah.
right? What is fact basically imitating fiction, hallucinating like fiction can make it more interesting for people. At which point Scarlett Johansson came out and said, "Hang on, you've used my voice and you don't have the rights to use this."
Your plausible deniability goes out the window for two reasons. One is that you're fucking Sam Altman putting out a tweet saying her, right?
Her.
Which obviously
No, but what are you
has been
denying?
voiced by-
What are you denying though? I mean, you're not. What are you denying?
Yeah.
What is
No,
that
but
to deny?
once again, second is that people are already pissed off in the creative space. People are pissed off with AI saying, you can't just take these things and like pretend they are your things, right? Like if like AI art, for instance, is much maligned because, is it really art or not, right?
Yeah.
So it is a combination of these two things. Now the separate question is, therefore, Nitin Sundar, if we were building an AI model and we got, say, Shyam Rangila to sort of voice Modi ji, and then we left it out there saying that this is no one's voice, like this is just a generic voice. Can we get away with it or not? Right? Like you can have a mimicry artist sort of. So the question is of likeness versus anything else, right? Is it how the audience perceives it or what you put into it that matters?
Now, so my question is this, right? Now, Shyam Rangila, or whoever that person is who gave the voice for Sky, or our friend Prashant DP, these are all people who have the innate ability to imitate other people's voices, knowingly or unknowingly.
Yeah.
The nuance is the person who gave the voice to Sky was probably, we don't know, was not actually instructed to mimic Scarlett Johansson. It's possible that the voice she gave is her own voice. Now, are we saying that it's a thought crime on her part or a vocal crime on her part to be sounding like Scarlett Johansson? So why can she not put her voice out there and leave it as it is?
But then
and not
you're
claim it to be
assuming that what is recorded is what is actually played out. Going back to the music thing,
Yeah.
Any of the playback singers today, the way they sing is nothing like what the final output sounds. You put in auto tune, you put in that, you put in this filter, that effect to create and pick bits and pieces from what they've sung to create the final song, right? So
So you're
whatever
saying the
was
voice,
recorded,
the VO
you
was
can
modified
layer
to
it.
make it. You're saying the VO might have
Can
been
be,
modified.
right?
Can be. So there are three
Yeah.
different possibilities here, right? One is a person sounds very similar to another person naturally without actually
Correct.
trying to
Correct.
imitate a voice, right?
Yeah.
Then there is this example of mimicry where you change your voice to make it sound like some other person, which is a skill.
Correct.
Some would say, imitation is the best form of flattery. Ilayaraja might not agree. And then there is this third thing where you're talking about voices getting modified with AI to make it sound like someone else.
One question, one second. One question that I have for you is famously someone who looks like someone else is called a doppelganger, but someone who sounds like someone else is that called a
Dopplerganger.
Dopplerganger.
Beat you to it. You heard it before.
I said it first.
The sound came from my own.
Copyright strike.
Dopplerganger effect.
Dopplerganger effect.
So, so this is the interesting point, right? If I see a song that is sung by Taylor Swift, let's say, or I'm listening to a song that's sung by the late great S.P. Balasubramaniam, there is a certain amount of processing that's done on top of the voice, and what I'm actually hearing is not S.P. Balasubramaniam at the end of it. It's not
Correct.
Taylor Swift at the end of it. It is Taylor Swift
Yeah.
plus software. Now, your point is there is Scarlett Johansson plus software. There is some other voiceover artist plus software. Both of it sound the same.
Yeah.
Now, who owns the original rights to that sound that
Is
comes
made
out?
to sound the same.
Yeah. Both
Yeah.
are made to sound
No,
something.
so-
Both are made to sound something, right? Now,
Correct. Yeah.
yeah, both are being made, really. So,
Yeah.
how can Scarlett Johansson, just by virtue of being the more famous of the two people, claim that she has
Yeah.
rights to that particular
Yeah,
song?
no, so that
It's
is
an
for
ethical
lawyers
question
to
I'm-
figure out, right? Yeah, for your edification, Nitin Sundar, let me bring up something else that is of legal interest here, which is something called the likeness issue, right? Which is different from copyrights. So when you make a cricket game, why can't
yeah.
you sort of make Sachin Tendulkar look like Sachin Tendulkar and call him Sachin?
Tendehar! Denier!
Denier, yeah, all of these things, right? Why do they have to do that? Or even when they talk about, I think you're not allowed to say IPL, right? Indian Premier League. We're technically
Yeah.
not allowed to say. You're supposed to call it the Indian
Indian
T20, some
T20
shit like that.
tournament. Yeah.
Tournament, yeah. Which is the personality rights, right? Which is commercial use of identity such as name, image, likeness, etc., or other
Logos,
unequivocal identifiers, right? Which are considered
Yeah.
property rights. So in that regard, that is why I'm guessing these guys will have a problem, because voice is definitely sort of part of the celebrity persona itself, right? And part of their celebrity ownership. Therefore,
I get
guess
it.
they'll fall. But anyway, I don't think they've gone to the extent of this. But I think this is like a very mad thing. Like everything else AI, right? Which is the other thing
Yeah.
that they were talking about AI was that the AI merchants now have to sort of in every press release of theirs sort of talk about artificial general intelligence and how it could bring the end of the world, so that people will pay attention to their boring demos, right? AI has literally gone nowhere in all the time that we spent, except
For me, the
doing some
biggest
random shit.
the biggest meta joke in all of this is that in a AI demo, the biggest bone of
Yeah.
contention is a human voice. It is not an AI generated voice. It is a human voice. And for me, I was
Yeah.
actually surprised to know that there was actually a human behind this voice. Because my assumption going in when I first read about Scarlett Johansson's problem with these
Yeah.
guys was that they had synthetically generated someone, or they had synthetically generated a voice to sound like Scarlett Johansson. The fact that they have not
Yeah, I think
actually reposes some faith in humanity to me, because they actually had to go to a human
let's
being.
spend some time on this, right? This aspect of AI, I think, needs to
Yeah.
be brought to this thing to say, is it fair for a machine to generate art or likeness or whatever? How do you see that? Let us say if Ilayaraja's music was generated by AI, would he be
Yeah.
happy about it or not?
My answer is, if Ilayaraja's music was generated by AI, it would not be Ilayaraja's music anymore. It would be AI music. So there was this website or this app that I saw was going viral on Twitter, which basically was a music generator app where you could go and give it very simple word inputs, things like give me a beach song, sunny day, sandy vibe, holiday, rum, bikinis, and it would generate a 2-minute song for you, right? By running it through the software, a song that had never been generated before, which sort of incorporates all the elements of what you wanted out of it. Now, the songs that this software were giving out, they sounded generic, they sounded okay, but as you would imagine, for something that is getting custom generated, within 2 minutes of you giving a few word inputs, it sounded like crap at the end of the day. When you appreciate a song, or when you appreciate any piece of art, what you're appreciating, at least for me, is not just the bits and bytes that are coming out of it, but the human element of what went into creating it, right?
Right.
When you stand in front of the Mona Lisa, the reason you appreciate the Mona Lisa is because you're trying and putting yourself in the shoes of the painter and understanding what they were going through. I recently went for this Van Gogh exhibit, okay, which was like a 3D interactive exhibit. I think Bombay also had one of these sometime back.
Correct.
And I'm not really into art, right? And I know nothing about Van Gogh except that he went and cut his own ear. But to be in that exhibit for about 1 year, to hear the commentary of what this person went through and why his artwork looks a certain way and how it reflects the kind of life, the kind of relationships he was having at that particular point in time. That's what actually makes art for me. You start empathizing with that art when you know exactly what they were going through, right? At that point in life. So I don't know how AI can ever generate that, because you're never going to be able to empathize with AI at that level as a human being. If I were an AI, I would probably appreciate it, but no, as a human being, I don't know.
Interestingly, the future is basically AI talking to AI, right? Like if you have a spam call, it is going to be answered by your AI spam bot, which basically sorts of talks to it and then cuts the call without passing it on to you, right? But here's a point that forget AI, right? Even in art, there are people who can create an authentic duplicate of an Mona Lisa, right? With exact brush strokes, age it, etc., etc. But it's not valued as the same. Like if it is discovered to be a fake, it doesn't have the same potential, right? Which is why, I mean, in the real world itself, it's not possible. Which is why I don't think AI is all that significant in terms of all these artistic things, because what it will do is it will be able to generate the middle layer of all of the mediocre stuff that people put out, right? So your Hollywood no longer needs script writers. Like it can automatically generate a superhero movie. It can probably even generate the superheroes, right? With just taking permission from, I don't know, a couple of actors, Ryan Gosling or Chris Pratt or something, and then create a full movie, right? And people will watch it because it is whatever. But I don't consider that art. I mean, it might run, it might not. But you are at no point in time creating something that is
going to
all
stand
of these
the
things,
test of
right?
time.
What makes art is obviously the personal human element, right? And I don't
Goes
think
back-
therefore AI is anything that is dangerous in that sense.
Goes back to my pet concept, which I think repeated on every episode of Leftover Lasagne. Our
What is that?
superpower is the stories, right? And if AI is generating art, there is no story behind it, right? So why will I engage with it at all? In fact, since we're talking about
This
AI
is
and
interesting
art, right?
because the starting point of every podcast recording historically has been a sound check, right? Where the person who's doing the sound check is asking the person who was taking the sound check, what did you eat for breakfast, right? And you're saying that literally everything from what you ate for breakfast has sort of importance on the output of what is created. So what you did that day might have been different if you had poha versus what if you had idli, or if you had appam and mutton stew, which is interesting. I
What
feel like
if-
there's relevance to that.
What if you're into intermittent fasting and you've not had any breakfast?
Correct, exactly. Yeah, all of that has an effect on what is finally produced.
So, my last thought on AI and art is I would rather AI or whatever, machines, right? Just take away all the grunt work. Can we get machines to file our taxes? Can we get machines to apply for passports and visas? Can we get
Edit your
machines to clean
podcast
the
properly.
drains? Edit your podcast properly. Do all the grunt work.
Just
Leave the
give us one
artistic work to the-
software.
Yeah,
Just give us one
thing.
software.
Exactly. Where I just say one, take away all the grunt work, right? There's so many examples.
Yeah.
Do the dishes.
So
I know
before
they're already
Nitin
doing it,
Sundar,
but
we've
Yeah.
been through at this point in time. We've been through Audacity. We've been through Reaper. We briefly looked at.
Da Vinci Resolve.
we
No,
went
let's
to
also talk
Clipchamp.
about Zoom.
We
Right?
came
We've
to
used Zoom.
Riverside. Yeah,
Have you
Zoom for
Zoom?
recording. So what happened last time when we recorded on Riverside was it captured a bunch of background noise, and their voice normalization sucks because it like drowns out all of human laughter or any of the other frequencies, right? So what we are going to do this time, what I am going to do this time is edit on Riverside using their transcript based editing tool, export that to Clipchamp, and Clipchamp allows you to detach audio from video if it is one sort of entire clip, right? But the moment I split it, then I can't detach audio. I have to do it separately. So detach audio, take it to Audacity, clean up the background noise and the variation in our loudness, plug it
Yeah.
back into Clipchamp, export it as a video, and then upload it on podcasters for Spotify and YouTube respectively.
Dear friends, 12-year-old listeners, this is the grunt work that goes into creating a podcast in 2024. Now, when you come back to listen to this in the archives 30 years from now, when you will be reliving the great years, right, when you were a teenager, to remember this is how the world was back then.
Yeah, man.
Indeed.
Okay.
This is what I want AI
So-
to do. Right, just solve this. Why can't this get solved? Right? Damn it.
That's
Yeah.
it.
ராஜா கைய வச்சா அது ராஜா போனதில்ல நான் தாஜா பண்ணி வச்சா வண்டி பேஜா பண்ணதில்ல பெருசு என்றாலும் சிறுசு என்றாலும் சொகுசு என்றேலதா இந்த ராஜா கைய வச்சா
Move on to the next layer of copyright and stuff like that is that growing up, I always valued my creative output, right? And thought that no one else in the world could think like me, right? But this is obviously a very, very stupid thing to think because going back and sharing one of my own reels. Today I learned that on 12th March 1951, two different comics debuted in the US and UK, both titled Dennis the Menace. Apart from the names though, the strips drawn by Hank Ketchum and Dennis Law are completely different. So, if you thought you could catch him with the law on plagiarism, you'd be mistaken. The US version is based on Ketchum's son, who was also named Dennis, who's a troublesome boy but good at heart. The UK Dennis, though, is a typical badly behaved schoolboy with no redeeming qualities. He was named after a song the editor heard.
Dennis the Menace from Venice. He gonna live with gold rings in his ear. He will sing you a song as he pushes along his gondola. Dennis the Menace from Venice. It's just a crazy coincidence that two comics came to be concomitantly. Kinda similar to when Isaac Newton and Leibniz independently invented calculus in the 17th century. Except those two fought about who is the goat of calculus.
What? I'm acting the goat. Acting the goat?
Unlike the two Dennises the Menaces, which are still running peacefully to this day, long after their creators. What mad odds! Still, not as mad as the odds that brought this universe together with you and I sharing this tidbit today. Till we meet again, may a happy coincidence brighten up your life. Yeah,
Nice. I didn't know this.
so that, right? Yeah, you've hit like and you've also commented saying Tintin in the
Did I?
Soviets.
You know,
Yeah,
you know, I have a problem.
which takes us to the next layer. We said all music has been copyrighted. We spoke of Dennis the Menace, which came to be in two different versions in 1951, and Newton, Leibniz, but also I think even this thing, right? Darwin and Wallace or someone came up with evolution independently and basically sort of went about doing it, right? And where I learned that this ceases to be a thing was actually in the world of crosswords, right? And Nitin Sundar, our first interaction was for some reason when you used to appreciate my humor when no one else would, as sort of the social media guy at ESPN Cricinfo, right? I still remember there was this epic tweet of mine, okay, which is India was playing West Indies in the T20, I want to say World Cup in 2014. Chris Gale, who was epic at that time, was dropped on zero by Ashwin and then got
Yeah.
run out by someone. And like basically, I said India just used their get out of jail free card, right? And this great tweet got one like, except it was the headline of your sort of tweet report for the day, right?
I remember
but
this.
what it
Wow.
also, yeah, you do remember this.
Things that I remember.
Amazing.
I remember
Things
this.
that you remember. What this also meant was that when you were sort of looking at crosswords for ESPN Cricket Info, you actually sort of roped me in as well, right? And I was sort of at the fag end of my. Where is my tweet? There you go. Yes. As you can see,
One like.
one like. One
Twitter-
like. And I'm
Twitter
guessing that is
discovery.
your like.
Broken in
But-
2014, still broken in 2024. Yeah.
Yeah, but the point is, so crosswords is the first place where I learned this, right? So, for instance, the rules of crossword clue creation are that you use only things that are relevant to the clue and nothing else, right? Which means if you were to clue a word like average, right, Nitin Sundar, what is the possible way in which you would try to create a clue around it, right? It is likely that if you are into cryptic crosswords, you would break the word into either AVE and rage, right? Why? Because AVE stands for avenue, which is a good substitution for road, and road rage is sort of like a good thing to sort of talk about. And you'll probably talk about something like
mean street anger.
Average is mean.
There you go.
Yeah, something like that.
Mean
Right?
street anger. I killed it. It's the best clue ever.
Correct. And you're like, no one else could have come up with this, right? Except like so many people will come up with this, right? So you can't really copyright a crossword clue. The other thing that you would think of is like average. You can think of mean, but also middle of the road, which works well with road rage and all of that. And like obviously everyone thinks of this. And the other way you could play this out is to split it as aver and age, right? AVER and age, and say like mean talk about how old you are or something like that, right? Because aver is speed talk and stuff like that. But obviously, like it is not only you who can make this, right? And the funny thing about this was there was one period of Twitter which was entirely dedicated to competitions from companies about random things where you could win random shit for a period of time. There would be a competition every day. The other thing was people just commenting with ahem to say I made this joke first long before you did, right? And do you remember this period?
Yeah. Funny, it's strange to suddenly realize that we are well past that period where companies would give out swag on Twitter.
Yeah. And so where this struck a real chord with me was there was a 2010 joke of the year, right? So Fringe awarded the funniest joke of the year in 2010 to Tim Vine, and his joke was basically I've just been on a once in a lifetime holiday, I'll tell you what, never again, right? And the funny thing is, this is 2010's joke of the year, and in 2009 I had made exactly the same tweet, and I'm like, bro, what the hell, right? Like
ahead of the times.
Ahead of the times. But the point again is that it's not there is nothing as such that is original in the world that and obviously this person has never followed me or anything, right? And then in 2017 another funny thing happened. There's this comedian called Abhijit Ganguly who made a hue and cry about the fact that Kapil Sharma show had stolen his joke, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm following this because I'm following him and all of that. So I'm like, what is the joke? And his joke was basically that he like names a bunch of cricketers and says how they're all bowlers only because they are younger siblings. And I'm like, hey, I made this joke in 2013. What the hell? You follow me also. And his whole contention was that he's been like making this joke for 3 years. I'm like, okay, that's 1 full year after I've made this joke. But the point is, Kapil Sharma may or may not have copied this joke, right? The point is that there is no objective way to say who came up with an idea first, or if it has been copied or not. You have to rely on good faith and track record of individuals, right? And I think our thoughts have evolved around this to say there is no merit in cracking the same joke first, and also like many people think the same way and can come up with the same idea independently.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what more to say. No, this, I mean, I don't know if this will make the edit because I myself don't remember the entire instance. There was a friend of mine who got very, very angry with me and actually stopped talking with me for a while. And I later found out it was because he thought I had plagiarized a joke of his. So the funny thing is, when he confronted me about it, I firstly did not remember the joke. I did not remember it as a joke I had ever cracked, first of all. But then he went and said, you know what, I tweeted this, a few days before you did. And I was like, okay, so you're telling me I copied your joke and put it out a few days later.
No,
Because he just completely cut me off. And then I went and told him, what happened? Why have you cut me off? And then he told me, they're like,
you
dude,
copied my joke.
sorry.
How can you copy my joke?
No, but except I don't remember the joke. I don't even remember the joke being cracked by me. When he told me the joke, I was like, hey, that's funny. That's a good joke.
But did it win 2010 Joke of the Year award? Come on, this is what we're asking. This will make the edit because you have beautifully segued us into the next concept, which I had introduced you to, which you'll probably not remember and think that you came up with it on your own. It's called cryptomnesia, right? Which
let me actually,
screws
before you
up
explain what
everything
cryptomnesia
about
is,
everything. Yeah.
before you explain what cryptomnesia actually is, let me try to explain what I think it is, right? So back when Bitcoins became popular, right? So you could buy, when people invested into Bitcoin, right? Like you got it for very cheap. Like for $5, you get like one Bitcoin or whatever. Except after people bought these Bitcoins, they didn't really, they bought it and left it somewhere, right? They found the code or key was given to them. They saved it. They put it in their wallet and they went away, not even remembering it. And somebody actually sold Bitcoin to buy 2 pizzas and all, right? And the value of that Bitcoin was worth to buy the entire Domino's chain later on because Bitcoin grew in popularity. But when
and
Bitcoin
Domino's reduced in popularity.
Yeah, that's how the dominoes fall. Right. The domino effect. But this is the thing. So later when Bitcoin became really, really big, people were like, oh shit, I bought these Bitcoins. They must be worth millions of dollars now. Let me go and sell them and get that money. Except they have lost the key. That is important. The key is basically a set of characters which is unique to every Bitcoin address or whatever. And there are entire podcast episodes, YouTube videos about people trying to trace back lost keys to Bitcoins. So the act of forgetting what your crypto key is crypto amnesia.
Amazing. Well done.
Except it is not. So Tony will tell us what crypto amnesia actually means now.
Good job. But do you remember the time Twitter peaked in terms of this whole realization, which was, sir, you made lakhs, where I don't know if it was like the same person's joke getting forwarded and everyone rehashing it, or people sort of coming up with it originally. Anyway, so rehashing it, which couldn't happen.
Please explain what sir, you
key.
made lakhs is.
Yeah.
10 years back, before the BJP came into power, there used to be another party that used to rule or govern India. It is called the Congress Party. And their second tenure from 2009 to 2014 was beset with all sorts of corruption issues. And one of the peaks of those corruption issues was, of course,
and back when citizens actually cared about things, right?
The most popular, the peak, the crest really, the crowning glory of the Congress years was the Commonwealth Games that were held in New Delhi, which were headed by this person called Suresh Kalmadi, who was the head of the Indian Commonwealth Games Association. So, and there was a lot of corruption allegations that were leveled at Mr. Kalmadi, saying because the toilets were not built, the housing complexes, the stadium facilities, nothing was built properly. It was a omni shambles of Commonwealth Games that was hosted in India. And people said that's because all the money that was allocated to this project were actually taken away by Mr. Suresh Kalmadi. So, Suresh Kalmadi, the name anagrams to Sir, you made lakhs. So, that's the joke.
Correct.
Now, somebody came up with
back
this.
in 2010, lakhs was a big amount, obviously.
That's the other thing. Also, his name was not Suresh Krormadi, so it had to go with what his name was. That's how anagrams work. I mean, you can only use letters in his name. So, but so somebody came up with this and tweeted this, and it became popular. Except over a period of the next few months, lots of people discovered this for the first time and said, "Hey, did you realize Suresh Kalmadi anagrams to Sir, you made lakhs?"
to Sir, you made lakhs.
So much so that hashtag Sir, you made lakhs became a hashtag on Twitter, where if somebody was rehashing or cracking an old joke thinking it was original, people would respond with hashtag Sir, you made lakhs.
Sir, you made lakhs. Yeah, exactly.
Back when Twitter was fun. Yeah.
Were we 12 then? No. So this was legit when Twitter was fun, and we are
Yeah.
not seeing this unobjectively. But yeah, cryptomnesia is one of the other things that screws everything up. Right? Is that it has happened to all of us multiple times. May or may not have realized it. Is that a forgotten memory returns without it being recognized by you, and you think that it is something new and original that you come up with, right? So
Yeah.
if for instance Nitin's friend had told him that amazing joke, and Nitin famously, what he remembers and what he forgets is an entire different podcast in itself. But like few days later, Nitin is like, "Hey, oh, this concept, I've come up with a great joke," and he's like saying the same joke, but in his memory, he thinks of it as original, right? And that is what cryptomnesia is. So, someone undergoing cryptomnesia is not deliberately engaging in plagiarism, but they're experiencing a memory as if it were a new inspiration,
Yeah.
which basically fucks everything up, right? Like
Indeed. Yeah.
the question of what is original, what is not, etc., is like
Yeah.
laid to waste here. That's another interesting aspect of original thinking, copyrights, and all of the other things.
We're almost at the end. I definitely want to narrate this beautiful anecdote. I promise that we
Please.
will talk about Anu Malik, and it would be remiss on our part to do an episode on copyright and not mention Anu Malik even once. So recently, Anu Malik has I think a nephew or someone. He has I think
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
nephew
Yeah.
who's called Amal Malik. Okay, so Amal Malik, right, in the film Golmaal Again, which came in 2017, did a remix of Anu Malik's famous song Neen Churai Meri Kisne Ho Sanam, right? Now Anu was upset with Amal because Amal did not ask Anu Malik for consent or for copyright before he did this remix of the song, right? Anu was further enraged when Amal clarified that they didn't need the uncle's permission because they had already bought the rights to the original song, Sending All My Love by Linear, from which Anu Malik had initially copied and made Neen Churai Meri. This for me is so funny in multiple levels because it's a family dispute, right? This whole thing could have been a phone conversation. Like this could have been an email. This did not have to come out in the internet. But Anu Malik was so angry with his nephew
Beautiful.
for not having referenced him. But this is amazing, isn't it? Like
Beautiful.
Anu Malik
Beautiful.
is a legend, man. Absolute legend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brings a But yeah, I vaguely when we were doing copyrights, I vaguely remembered something of this kind happening where Anu Malik went, tried to put a copyright strike on someone who said, "Hey, I have rights to the original song. You do first,"
Yeah.
which you probably did not have and got away with.
Amazing. Amazing.
Imagine
Yeah.
making Jankar beats for Anu Malik songs so that you can slip below the radar and later
This is
become
what,
T-series.
This is what Priyadarshan basically did. No, this is his entire filmography was basically first lifting from Hollywood for multiple years. With actually, like, there is a Malayalam movie called Boeing Boeing, which is actually based on, I think, a French play or an English film, which is called Boeing Boeing itself. Like, he didn't even bother to change the title. And once he ran out of that thing, he basically took Malayalam movies and remade them in Hindi. Amazing. Yeah, so
in
you
Tamil
can make
and in
entire
Hindi.
careers out of this also. Yeah. So the opposite of a patent troll is like is a Priyadarshan, basically. That is what it's like.
So tell me, Tony, was Drishyam faithful, or was it inspired by the devotion of Suspect X,
Definitely.
or was
Definitely.
it what was it? Or was it cryptomnesia?
Dude, there is
And does it matter? The bigger
absolutely
question is, does it matter?
So that is what I want to say. There is absolutely no doubt that Drishyam is 100% inspired by Devotion of Suspect X. But this is the beauty of it, is that one, he adapted it to a Kerala context beautifully. Two, he came up with a much more elegant solution than the one in Devotion of Suspect X, which is a little bit more mathematically clinical. Right here, he has sort of found a solution which is even better, actually. So in that sense, Drishyam, I would say, has taken the original one and layered on top. Yeah. But here's the funny thing for all people who are even wondering if this is a copy or not. I think the immediate previous movie he made was something called My Boss, which is a scene for scene ripoff of The Proposal or something, where Jennifer Aniston has a junior employee who she has to marry for visa purposes, one of those things, right? Again, like when you're talking about good faith and track record, I think this is a good way
No
to say
plausible
it, right?
deniability. Yeah.
Obviously Jitu Joseph has copied Devotion of Suspect X, but he's done it so well, and the sequel is entirely his, right? And I never thought he'd be able to pull off a sequel to something like Drishyam, which he did with great aplomb. So I don't know, it's one of those things, man. Like if Kaigo Higashino actually sues him, I feel like he owes him a lot of money, but at the end of the day, he's created something that is a great watch for all of us in the Indian sort of movie watching space. That's what we...
Jitu Joseph pulled off an improvement on Devotion of Suspect X and a wonderful sequel, like all great South Indian meals with great aplomb.
Oh man, aplomb is what. But the funny thing is, why do you guys call it aplomb and it is papadam? Because the reason I'm asking is because the English call it popadum, right? And it has to come from Tamil Nadu rather than Kerala, I would imagine.
I really don't care because I loathe both those things. I honestly prefer the North Indian roasted papad to both. Like a legit papad fired in a microwave oven, for me, is just with those peppers, inside
legit.
That is the legit thing for me. Yeah. So I don't really care. I don't fight over this thing. Yeah.
Anyway, on that note, all that we have to tell our listeners is if you want to do a remix of Leftover Lasagna and do something better with it, we are more than happy for you to do so. Right? Like
Copy that.
But before you do that, two things. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever. And also rate us 5 stars, no? Because why not? Like if you've stuck around till now, you probably should feel like this is the only thing that we're asking. Please.
Fully agree. Please do and let your friends know about us. Thank you so much. See you in a week's time.